You fry them once at a lower temperature in oil. It's called like a blanch. And then you fry them again a second time. And the reason you do that is you're trying to form a shell a little bit on the outside of the fry. There's then a cooling step to try to cool it to make sure like it sort of creates a separation on the outside of the inside. And then you want to fry them again at the end and you get a nice crispy outside, but a fluffy, almost mashed potato-y inside. And I think most people, common sense, you go to a really nice restaurant that makes their own fries, you can tell the difference between that and like the frozen fry that tastes like cardboard a few minutes after it gets cold. You know, most fries are good when they're hot out of the fryer and dunked in ketchup, but you can tell the difference between people that are doing it the real way versus more of like the shortcut way.
Welcome to Winning at Work, the podcast for foodies, founders, and food and beverage professionals. You know, if you wanted to discover a new brand, a new food or beverage to try, there are literally thousands of companies out there. It is very difficult to do that. That's why we curate the different, the better, and the special brands here each and every week, so you don't have to do the heavy lifting. If you're a founder and you're looking to connect with other like-minded executives, we make that very easy. And if you just work in the food and beverage industry and you're looking for fresh inspiration, we have that here in spades.
This episode is sponsored by Temple. Congratulations, you're selling in retail. But the competition is fierce and your brand is surrounded by similar products. How will consumers find you? Let Temple show you an innovative retail sales solution. Click on the Attract Consumers link below. Need to attract great employees? Click on the Hire Now below and we'll show you how to use your culture to help you stand out. Stay tuned for this week's episode.
Welcome to Winning at Work, everybody. This is Tony. Today, I've got Jesse Konig. He's the co-founder, and I love his title, Professor of Swizzology. He's the co-founder of Swizzler. This is basically, you think of like American comfort food, the food that we grew up eating. I can't wait to get into his story of how this, 100% grass-fed beef has expanded beyond their kind of signature spiral hot dog into smash burgers, crispy chicken, and how they've expanded into all the Washington, or nearly all of the Washington stadiums. Jesse, welcome in, my man.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. So you're like a huge sports guy, right? I mean, you played soccer yourself at school. You couldn't get enough of that, so you start coaching the women's club team. You just couldn't get away from it.
Yeah, I've always been a bit of a dabbler. So I've played lots of sports growing up, a little bit of everything. Soccer ended up being the thing I played the most of. I was always like solid above average, but never like a superstar. So I was able to try to always contribute in other ways. And coaching was something I sort of stumbled into, doing a little bit of that in college, which was a great way to make some extra money, more or less beer money on the side. But met lots of awesome people, was part of the men's club team too, so played lots of soccer. But yeah, sports have been a big part of the most recent years of the business, doing a lot of food stuff in stadiums, which is pretty unbelievable to be walking around these giant stadiums when there's nothing going on. There's deliveries coming in. It's nice and quiet. So it's been pretty unreal to be on the other side of it and seeing the behind the scenes of what it takes. These are super complex operations, so it's cool to see it all happen in real life.
Right. I mean, when you imagine the number of people that they push through inside of just a few hours, and that it literally comes to life, and you've got all these different brands, all the different food going out. The hamburger space is incredibly competitive. I mean, no matter what city you're in, you've got easily 10, 15 choices. And I'm just, for people who maybe are not in the DC area, I mean, because you've got a huge fan base there, a big tribe of people who follow you there in DC. I want to learn more about this food, because I have not been able to get up there and try this. Your website looks amazing. Your food photographer, you need to give him a raise. Tell us more about the food, the menu, and what you're trying to do here.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, burgers, obviously, they're part of the American culture. We were really thoughtful around that, of trying to think about how we could pivot our original food truck concept into something that touched more people and is something that kind of fits into a little bit more of the day-to-day of just about everybody in the U.S. Burgers and fries, it's pretty much, that's America right there. And yeah, it's weird. I think I kind of agree and disagree about all the different burger options. I think, yeah, there's so many burger options. It is pretty saturated in some ways, but in other ways, it's really starved for quality. I think we found this gap between traditional legacy QSR drive-through type of fast food, and then there's that like better burger movement that sort of happened. The $18 per person meal, it's inevitable, and even more so these days with all the inflation and craziness. And we were trying to fall somewhere in the middle. We wanted to be what we think of as like a premium fast food option. We wanted to really give 10 times the level of experience around the quality of the food and service of the legacy QSR and things, and still be beating up on the bigger, better burger concepts, but being at a more affordable, more reasonable price, especially when you consider quality. So when it comes to food, we're all about sourcing is where it starts for us. We want to use really good ingredients. We think cooking a burger in a lot of ways isn't rocket science. Like you mentioned, a lot of people can do it. But when you pair that up with great technique and good training, having an amazing team, and you have really good ingredients and you don't mess with them too much, you cook it fresh, you cook it to order. So we do 100% regenerative grass-fed beef smash burgers. We cook everything pretty much to order. We have a hand-breaded fried chicken sandwich we do. We make pretty much all of our sauces in-house. We get bread from a local bakery. We make our own fries. So we're really trying to just put all the thought and care we can into the quality of the food to make it delicious and craveable. And I think we think of taste comes first as one of our core values. I think we care a lot about sustainability and sourcing and, doing a great job for a lot of reasons. But we feel like if we can't beat the legacy fast food and these better burger concepts on taste, then what are we doing? We have to win on making the best tasting food first. We always try to do that. We've been really, really fortunate that, over the years, we've been built a bit of a reputation around having high quality food. We were recently named number 5 best burger by an awesome food writer at the Washington Post in DC, Maryland, Virginia recently. So that was really exciting and very validating.
Congrats, man. That's awesome to get the pub.
Yeah, it is awesome. I think we early on back in the day in our food truck days, we'd always be like pushing to try to get these like best new food truck awards and things. And I think over time we realized that sometimes it's pay to play. Sometimes you never know what's going on with that stuff. We put the ambitions to the side on it, but it's amazing just to have the organic validation of someone who you respect and admire, who does a lot of great journalism on food, coming out and critiquing 80 plus restaurants and putting you in the top, 5 or 10 against some of the best chefs in the country in DC. Yeah, it was really, really awesome.
You've got a great Instagram presence too. I mean, because you're at these stadiums, you have a lot of people that are going through and trying. And I think one of your videos that you had up there was at one of the Wizards NBA games, right? Where the announcers are just, they're calling a game and they're like, I just had the best burger I've ever had. Do you know where it was? Do you know when it was? It was right. It was like, he goes, it was just right now. Section 105.
Yeah, that was such an incredible thing. We actually had a friend of ours who's in the food industry send me a text message. He was watching the Wizards game live. This was like in the third or fourth quarter. It wasn't like a big meaningful game. And I just got a video of someone recording the screen and showing the announcers talking about us live on the air. And then, our sort of the partners and managers that are in the stadium sent us the live video cuts the next day. But that was surreal. Yeah, it was completely unprompted. We had no idea it was coming. We just were focusing on putting out really good food. I guess the announcers, they want to know what's going on in the stadium. They've got to eat as well. And they started talking about it. And then I think they also reviewed our crispy chicken sandwich after that and had some good things to say.
When you're serving really good, craveable food, it just lends itself to people taking pictures and having fun and showing where they are with it. And that was just like a natural, spontaneous expression of it,
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. And I think we were, we first started our first food truck. We started right out of college in 2014. And that was right in the prime, like, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, food porn, like things on Instagram blowing up, not videos back then, but photos. So I think we got a good amount of just understanding about how important it is to make sure that the food looks as good as it tastes and that people eat with their eyes. So we kind of got that imprinted early on. And back then it was more about doing sort of crazy different things. And of course, there's plenty of social media accounts that do a lot of that now. But I think for us, we always wanted to make sure that it is a complete experience. The food has to taste good. It's got to leave you feeling good because of the quality of the ingredients. Ideally, it's coming from a great source. But we also want to make sure it looks good, and the presentation is super important. So I think it's trying to layer all of those things together and just really take a step back and think about being the consumer, being the person who's coming in and is going to keep your business alive by spending money at your restaurant. And how do you make sure every brand touch point is going to be as seamless, as frictionless, as amazing and fun as possible. And that's what we've been trying to do. And I think we've been a little bit lucky since we didn't have this traditional restaurant industry 20 years of experience. We sort of had to like figure things out. And I know the buzzword is like first principles thinking these days, but really that's what we had to do.
Say that again. First principles think. Wait, what is that? Say that again.
It's something you hear a lot about on like, tech bro Twitter and like business podcasts and things, but thinking in first principles is sort of just shedding all of the ways people think about like culturally the stereotypes and things and trying to get down to what are the very core nugget principles. Like when you ask like the why question a few times, what is the real thing that people care about? And I think in the food space for us, we think a lot about, it comes down to how do you feel? Like how does it make you feel? Does it bring you joy? Does it leave you feeling good after? Or are you feeling sleepy and like you need to take a nap? Is it bringing people together? Is there elements of community there? So those are the things we're always trying to optimize for, is like, how do we make something taste great? How do we greet people when they come in the door? How do we make people feel really good? We're not perfect. The food business is super challenging.
Hey, I mean, you're human
business, but we do our best every day to just try to put out great experiences, and it starts with the food, but it's kind of everything around that as well.
So this is what I'm trying to figure out, because I love your mission. It's you wanted to expand your menu to the all-American eats that, we grew up on without the grease or the guilt. And I do think that's one of the issues that people have when they think about going to get a great burger and fries, is they think, oh, geez, now I got to go run 6 miles or go, lift some weights or something to, kind of burn off calories, et cetera. So how do you even approach living up to that, without the grease or guilt?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we try to, make a very clear perspective on, is like, we're not a health food concept. Like, we're not serving salads. And I think that's okay. I think in our mind, what we're trying to do is be a gateway for the person who's already eating a lot of fast food, because it's familiar, because it's convenient, because it's easy, because they just love the taste of a great burger and fries. We want to be appealing to that customer, and also giving the person who maybe hasn't had a burger in a while, because they know it makes them feel bad, because they know that it's not good for the environment, all these things that are, problematic in some ways about fast food. How do we like reintroduce those people to that burger a month, or the burger before the baseball game or at the stadium, and get them back into the fun and the joys and the nostalgia around having a really great all-American meal? So yeah, I mean, I think we try to really just focus on how does our bottom line make a little bit more sense than just making a profitable restaurant. I think we try to look at things from a little more modern approach of thinking about the triple bottom line, or 5 bottom line, whatever all these different companies think about it. But It's about making sure the business is sustainable. Of course, that's really important, but it's also trying to move the needle in the right direction around the quality of the food, that food's impact on the environment, how we treat our team, how we pay our team, and just trying to think about all those different things. And we know we're not perfect. There's tons of things we'd love to do, but we also try to make sure like we're leading into the food has to taste amazing. It's got to be at a price point that people are willing to pay and they feel like they're getting a really great value. And as we get bigger, we want to get better. That's, I think, the big thing we've put into our core DNA as a newer brand that's seen these incredible, brands all over the country that have started 50, 60 years ago that sort of lost their magic somewhere along the way and got very corporate and optimized for quarterly earnings and all these crazy things that happen.
Commercialized. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And like commercialization, like there are positives. Like we're not like, let's buck the system.
Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it, but when you start taking shortcuts, that's when you run into the, more of the unhealthy eating.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly how we think about it. It's like, let's not take shortcuts. Let's try to do things the right way. Like our French fries are a good example. We make our own house cut, twice fried fries. There's a lot of ways you can make French fries and do it a little bit faster, a little bit cheaper, but we've always taken pride on doing it the right way. The same way a chef would do it at a fine dining restaurant. That's the way that we're doing it for our restaurant, even if it is more of like a quote unquote fast food restaurant. When we make our burgers, it's like a smash burger on a locally baked bun that has a lot of thought into the ingredients. So it's just trying to really just go the extra mile and make sure there's a thoughtfulness and no shortcuts. And you're not just trying to do things because they're scalable and easier. Sometimes building out your own French fry manufacturing stuff is a lot more difficult, but we feel like it's rewarding and it sets us apart. So we try to focus on what are the important things? how do we find really great partners? If we can't find a great partner, how do we do it ourselves? And that's just sort of been our motto from day one. And we want to just continue along that line of thinking and stick to our guns and our values as we continue to grow.
People may not realize this, but as a food entrepreneur, when you decide that you want to sell fries and you're talking to your distributor that you want to have fries, they probably have 20 different brands they can show you. It's incredible. How many fries did y'all sample to land on the brand you wanted, right? I'm sure there's a whole story behind this.
Yeah, it's a big story. I don't know if we want to go deep into it.
We don't have to, but I just give us the high points because people have no idea how many options are available. And then I want to tell us a little, I'll also go through that, but I want to nerd out a little bit. Tell me why you double fry. People maybe never have heard of this. It's like incredible tasting fries.
All right, so we're going into fries. I love it. So fries are a big passion of ours. They always have been, more so right now, but I'll give you we'll start on the end and work our way back. But why do a twice fried fry? This is the original way French fries have always been done. Fries were originally from Belgium. So there's like the Belgian style twice fried fry. They're like frites. I know we call them French fries. I think the story is actually that in World War II, I believe it was, there were soldiers that were American that ended up in Belgium, but they were speaking French. So they thought it was France. So that's how like the whole French fry thing happened. But really it's a Belgian thing. Oh. And the twice fried fry, the whole point of it is that when you do you cut potatoes. Usually people soak them in water to pull out some starch, or they try to just make sure the potatoes are kind of set up for the best fry possible. You fry them once at a lower temperature in oil. It's called like a blanch. And then you fry them again a second time. And the reason you do that is you're trying to form a shell a little bit on the outside of the fry. There's then a cooling step to try to cool it to make sure like it sort of creates a separation on the outside of the inside. And then you want to fry them again at the end and you get a nice crispy outside, but a fluffy, almost mashed potato-y inside. And I think most people, common sense, you go to a really nice restaurant that makes their own fries, you can tell the difference between that and like the frozen fry that tastes like cardboard a few minutes after it gets cold. Most fries are good when they're hot out of the fryer and dunked in ketchup, but you can tell the difference between people that are doing it the real way versus more of like the shortcut way. And it's actually funny, like freezing isn't a bad thing in fries. It actually is better. Freezing is great because it creates more of that shell on the outside. The problem is that most frozen fries are these big commercial frying operations. So kind of circling back to the start of your question, there are a lot of fry options out there. But the surprising thing is they're actually all pretty much made by the same 2 or 3 companies. There's a huge monopoly around French fries in the U.S. and North America. It's kind of crazy. Like there might be 40 SKUs or different styles of French fry in a catalog, but they're all owned by like 2 or 3 brands. And they're all made in these giant facilities that are doing a 9-step process. And they're putting hundreds of thousands of pounds an hour through this line to make it, as efficient as possible. And they're good at making a lot of French fries, but they're taking a lot of shortcuts to be efficient and cheap. We believe in going a little bit slower, staying true to more of the Belgian style, better way of doing a French fry. And I think that's why ours can stand apart. And it's something we've gone so deep down the rabbit hole on. We tasted all the other fries. We realized no one's really doing it. We're actually starting a frozen French fry business, a manufacturing business to give our own restaurants fries, of course, but also give them to other restaurants and to be selling them in the grocery store too. I
just backed up into that by mistake.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. This is sort of a newer development too. It's outside of like the quote unquote Swizzler world a little bit. But
dude, that is so smart. That is so smart, man. You're just diversifying. Wait, before we get into your frozen fry business, that sounds really cool. And I imagine obviously that's going to be a food service play where you just, provide that to other restaurants. So you're saying the fries, the potatoes are cut, and then you soak them in water to get rid of the starch. Then you give them that first light fry at a lower temperature. Are you saying, of course, they have to dry. You kind of let that shell kind of form. At what point are they frozen?
So they're frozen after they're fried. So you basically would cut them. There's like blanching and brining and stuff that can happen on the front end. But basically, you're going to go from a cut potato to a first fry. And that's when you're going to be cooling them down. So that's when they get frozen. Sometimes if someone's like seasoning or coating a fry, that would also happen probably before they're frozen. Sometimes they're done after. But they're getting cooled down rapidly from the time that they're fried on that first fry. You're trying to then get them cold quickly. And in a lot of restaurants, like if you go get boardwalk fries somewhere, or you go to some of these QSR brands that do fries in house, they'll usually just pull them out of the first fry and let them sit at room temperature to like get down to room temperature, but they're not actually cooling them down. If you go to a big hotel or a bigger operation that has a bigger kitchen, they're usually throwing them into a walk-in, into a fridge to get them to cool down to like refrigerated temperature, which is good. And that's what we used to do back in the day when we first started. And you get really great French fries that way. But now we got into the process of doing freezing, and we've found that the freezing really helps get even more of that crust on the outside to give a nice crunchy fry, and it helps them stay crispy a little bit longer. So by going into freezing, you're just kind of doubling down on the principles of what works really well. And sort of like, I think that's what gives us an advantage where we can be an outsourced option for these food service places where whether they have a small kitchen or they just don't want to have to pay for somebody to be in the back just cutting potatoes all day. We can use our expertise and equipment to make sure we're giving them the best quality fry and make it really easy for them to serve really great French fries to their guests. Well,
and you're also perfecting your own supply chain. You know, you're taking away a big, important step that they're not having to do now, and they can just have delivered the first fry, in a frozen form, and then they can just boom fry it up, and then now they've got the final product, right? That's the idea. That's amazing.
Thanks. And then we actually, because we do this already and we're doing the freezing step to solve our own needs, we started working on selling them in the grocery store as well. So you can cook them in the oven or air fryer at home. And our testing, they're really great. They taste better than any other frozen fry we've ever had, especially the ones I grew up on. They were on the sheet tray in the oven. It kind of tastes like nothing. So we're really excited to be getting really deep into this frozen fry world. And similar to our sourcing around our restaurant, like we want to be working directly with our growers, continuing to find ways to work with people doing things the right way. And again, as we get bigger, get better, helping farmers transition to better growing techniques and stuff that's more sustainable or higher quality nutrition. So I think it all plays into it. And it's funny because it's a different business, but it's so related to our restaurants and how we got started. And we've been making French fries for 8 or 9 years, along with hot dogs originally, now burgers and fried chicken sandwiches. So it's one of those serendipitous things we kind of stumbled into, but it's been really exciting. And again, like who doesn't love French fries? Like I grew up eating hot fries out of a bag at a drive-through, and it's, one of the favorite things. So we're glad to be able to bring people a really high quality restaurant quality fry without all the weird ingredients you can't pronounce, a super clean label thing that's just potatoes, oil, seasonings, that's it. And keeping it really simple and just focusing on quality and technique and not taking shortcuts.
There's a huge movement with lower sugar or less sugar. When you start looking at all the ingredients that we put on our food, the commercial manufacturers have just added so much sugar and corn syrup and, high fructose, all this to kind of keep extending those original ingredients out as far as they can so they can create a cheaper product, make more money. Again, nothing wrong with profit, but what's happened is, this has come up quite a bit on the podcast, is that our taste buds are being re-engineered to want everything that is sweet. So with this movement you're making, with these fries, I got to tell you, there's a company that I totally need to refer you to because they have a food service option for sauces. I don't know if you've ever heard of Carl Starkey and Awesome Sauce.
Yeah, Awesome Sauce. Now that you mention it, that does sound super familiar. But we totally agree. That's the exact thing we've seen. Again, kind of like taking an outsider approach and looking at it from a consumer lens and sort of like a somewhat academic lens, more than this is the way it's always been. There has just been such a crazy amount of, quote unquote technical innovation that isn't necessarily a good thing, of re-engineering foods and doing things that are kind of like making our taste buds go crazy and making it craveable and all this stuff. But, when you look into you get really deep down this rabbit hole of high fructose corn syrup and sugar, like you mentioned, there's also a huge growing movement around seed oils. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that's something we've been paying a lot of attention to of, the detrimental and somewhat, scary effects of eating lots of things like canola and soybean oil and sunflower oil. And when you look at ingredient labels and realize how much of that stuff is in all of the food we eat, pretty much every processed food item you get at the grocery store, I think I've heard a stat 20% of the calories that all Americans eat right now come from seed oils. And there's a weird correlation, and there's people that can speak this better than I can around a lot of the diseases and the things that are going on that no one in America is feeling very fondly of, I imagine. There's a big correlation with the introduction of these seed oils into our diets through processed food. A lot that almost directly correlates to a lot of these things. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. And the one thing I will say is that I'm really optimistic. It sounds like Carl, I believe you said, an Awesome Sauce is doing some really great things in that space. We've met so many entrepreneurs and people in the food space who are trying to just take things either back to the way they were and going back to basics, or being really innovative about giving people better options and new food options that meet all of the growing demands around how people want to eat their food. So I'm really optimistic that I think really passionate founders coming out in the food space, having access to capital, being able to go and launch new products and test things out, that we're going to get a lot of great things. And there's going to be a huge shift in the foods that we all eat in the future. But it's going to take time, and it takes people, sort of like taking a pause and thinking, hey, is this just the way I've been eating because I've always eaten this way, or does this seem like the right thing to do? And I think almost everybody, it's a very common sense thing. Once you take a moment to pause and learn a little bit about our food system, you start to realize that most of the things that we're eating on sort of, flyby or on a default cruise control mode are usually not the things that are good for us. And there's nowadays, luckily, some good alternative options that are as convenient, as easy. Maybe they're a little bit more costly right now, but when you think about all the downstream effects of eating food that's bad for us and causes diseases and obesity and all the crazy things that are out there, it's a pretty good trade-off to invest in yourself and invest in the foods that you're eating and how you think about that.
Yeah, you just hit a home run, and you touched on so many things there that I'm really passionate about. If we were to look back in time, people were growing up on farms with their own livestock and their own vegetables, and that's the homesteader lifestyle. And the more you can be a little more self-sufficient and blend those kind of things into your own diet, just the better. The more we are dependent on these large commercial systems, the more you're just getting wrapped up into a supply chain with things that you just do not want to be eating. And I think it's super important for companies like yours and others who are able to feed, lots and lots of people, that you can start introducing better and better ingredients. And, to your point, we are going to get to price parity. It's going to take a little while, but in the meantime, you just have to make, better choices. And when you do find a good QSR, a chain that you just love, has better, higher quality food, and you like the people, the experience, the vibe, the experiential side of it, you just stick with them, and I think that's what's happening for you. Now, before we go, your footprint is in DC, correct?
Yep, we are currently based in DC. We have our restaurant in Navy Yard, Southeast DC, for those that know the area. We're right next to Nats Ballpark, is where we opened our first brick and mortar during COVID, no less, but today it's doing pretty well. And then we have 6 stadium locations across 3 of the major sports arenas. So we're at Capital One Arena, we're at FedEx Field this season for the first time, at Nats Ballpark. So if you're going to see a Capitals game, a Wizards game at Capital One Arena, go root on the Washington Commanders at FedEx Field, or go watch a baseball game at Nats Ballpark, you can get your Swizzler fix at any of those places, or come see us at our restaurant.
This, what you're building, not probably, something like this would be very attractive to many other cities. Do you imagine, is there a time in the future where Jesse and the experts at Swizzology expand this to other cities?
Yeah, it's something we think about. And I think when we got into the burger space, kind of circling all the way back to how we started, you mentioned it's a very saturated space. And I challenged it a little bit, saying, well, it's sort of starved for quality, even though there's lots of options out there. Part of the reason we focused on, burgers and fries, Americana, quote unquote, this better fast food, is we feel like we wanted to do something that could make an impact at a really large scale. We wanted to do something that wasn't this niche thing that only works in cities or only works in certain parts of the country. We wanted to do something that had the legs to grow and make an impact and truly give people better food, and ultimately support a better supply chain and sourcing, all the stuff we started talking about here. So yeah, in the back of our minds, ever since day one, we wanted to build something that could be all over the country and be competing with the biggest chains that are out there. I think we've tried to take an approach of slow and steady, that you can't scale something that's not really amazing. So we wanted to make one really great restaurant, and then we're working on probably getting to 2 really great restaurants and stadiums and all this stuff. But we've definitely had interest from folks reaching out, doing things like in the franchising space or growing the brand. So it's something that we've definitely considered. And we just want to make sure we're taking a thoughtful approach. I think you can most likely guess that we're not going to just take a shotgun approach where you have Swizzlers all over every part of the country all at once. We'll likely try to be focusing on one region to start and then being able to grow thoughtfully and build out our supply chain and be able to grow from there. But there's definitely some talks, things in the works for those that are maybe in more of the restaurant space, the franchising world. Definitely reach out. Would love to get you like on a list or just be in touch and fill you in on some more of the nitty gritty details. But for any listeners that are looking to get Swizzler and that aren't maybe right directly in DC, I will say there's a chance that, there could be one coming near you. But in the meantime, come to our nation's capital, come eat some Swizzler. There's lots of amazing food options here. There's lots of really awesome founders. So I think there can be a really great visit and a great experience no matter what. But please make sure you come and get a burger, get a chicken sandwich, eat some fries while you're here too.
Well, and very selfishly, here I am in North Carolina, and you're a Demon Deacon, so I think it makes sense for you to come to North Carolina next. That's all I'm saying.
I will give some sneak peek. I do always want to give a little bit of alpha, when we're on a podcast to give something fun. So I will say, if, no promises here, but if there is going to be a growth plan for Swizzler in the near future, I'd say it's a pretty safe bet that sort of like the mid-Atlantic, the Southeast, between DC and Atlanta is a pretty good bet that I'd place of where you might see a Swizzler location popping up. So I don't know if North Carolina will be the first one, but it's definitely in the first few locations we're thinking a lot about. And of course, love would be awesome to kind of go full circle and have some future Demon Deacons that are on campus being able to go get their Swizzler fix rather than go in the cookout, which we used to do back in the day all the time.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Well, and you could roll things out in food trucks too, and just kind of reintroduce. You have so many options that are open to you. Jesse, I'm so glad you've been able just to talk more about your story and these great fries and just kind of how you're managing this. There's so many other topics that I know we can get into, but we'll have to wait for another time. It's so good seeing you again here, my man, on Winning at Work. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, we'll have to do a round two. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks so much.